We're going to have a little relaxed talk here about inflation, interest, and the Federal Reserve to give you kind of an overview of each of those and how they work together. Now, this does not preclude or prevent or should you ignore everything else that's in the learning guides, but this will help in the glue to put it all together. So before you watch this video or immediately after, you should also be reading the story that was put out and the audio. Between those two things and this video, you should have a good handle on those three and be able to get through relatively easier all the other questions in the three learning guides that cover inflation, interest, and the Federal Reserve. So here we go. We're going to start with inflation. Inflation is simply when there's too much money chasing too few goods. Okay? So what that means is you have a whole bunch of extra money coming into the economy, everybody getting a whole bunch of extra and then going out and spending. That puts price pressure on the businesses and everything seems to go up. So what causes inflation? Put simply, it's when we print too much money, when the government keeps printing money and throws it out into the economy. Well, why do they need to print more money? Well, for spending. Well, why do they need to spend? Because when it gets right down to it, they keep wanting to spend money because they can. So where does the government get all this money to spend? Well, from a couple places. One, from taxes and from debt. Debt? Yes, we borrow money. When the government has spent all the money that they have collected from taxes, then they simply print more money and say, we owe this money. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into that. That's a whole nother conversation that'll get completely spin out of control. But suffice it to say, right now in the rising prices that we're having, and you're experiencing those right now, all these rising prices are due to inflation. The extra printing of money gets put out into the economy, and then when there's a whole bunch of money out there, prices have to go up because there's so high demand. We're back to supply and demand. So much money chasing the same number of goods as there was before. Everybody wants a burrito. Everybody wants a stereo because they have so much extra money, but there are only so many burritos or so many stereos available. So the prices go up because so many people want it. The demand is high. Back to supply and demand. Okay, so then how do they get all that free money in the economy? They spend it. But they've been spending money for all these decades, but we've never had inflation like this. Well, what could have happened in the last couple of years that would have caused a whole bunch of money to be put out into the economy altogether? You're right. All that free COVID money. Was it something like $7 trillion has been put out for all that free stuff? Okay, so that's inflation. All that extra money being put out into the economy. Okay, so then we have something called interest. Interest has two parts, one side and the other side. The one side is the interest that you pay when you want to borrow money. Say you want to get a loan for a house or for a car. You never get a loan for a car. You want to get a loan, a business wants to get a loan to expand. Okay? When you get a loan, you pay interest. You pay extra money on top of what you borrowed. That is interest. Now, the other side of interest is the money that you get when you put it into the bank. So you put money into a savings account, they give you interest. So that's how the bank makes their money. They take your money, they give you a little bit of interest, and then they loan it out to other people. They get they receive a bigger amount of interest, and the in-between is the profit. Here's an example. Right now, you get about a 1/4 of 1% interest by putting your money in the bank. The bank is charging 3-4% for a loan for a house. Well, that in-between amount, that's their profit. That's how banks make money. That's plain and simple. Okay, so that's how interest works. All right, so that's 2 pieces of the 3-piece puzzle. Then we have the Federal Reserve. They are the ones who control, so to speak, the flow of money in our country. They control the interest rates and they control inflation. How? They're the ones who determine what the interest rates are. They are the ones that charge the bank interest, and when the Federal Reserve says, banks, we're going to charge an extra interest, well, the bank simply passes that amount on to whoever borrows money from them. So, a couple weeks ago, the Federal Reserve increased interest rates by 1/4%. That also, in turn, increased interest rates for people wanting to buy houses, for businesses who wanting to have loans, for farmers who need loans for their crops to plant and such. Okay, so that's the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve also is the one who prints the money. And they're the ones who say, hey, we need X amount of dollars because Congress is spending too much money and we don't have enough money. And by the way, here's an aside. Go back and look at the gold standard lecture and you'll understand why why we're spending so much money now, just free stuff all over the place. Why so much money is being spent. Okay, and it goes through in detail. Anyway, so back to the Federal Reserve. So they control the interest and inflation. So they're the kind of running between the two. Okay, so now that we have inflation, we have interest, and we have the Federal Reserve, how do they all work together? And how does it all affect you? Well, I suppose we can take what's happening right now in the economy, in your life, as an example because it relates right to you. You'll notice that prices have been going up. Okay, up go the prices. So that is a result of inflation. So how does it affect you? Well, probably over the last year and a half, prices on the average for the individual person, at least mine, have gone up 15 to 20% overall. I'm paying about 20% more than last year. And I imagine if you did your calculations, or your parents did the calculations over how much they paid for the same bills last year to this year, it'd be an overall 20%. Okay, so let's get the old calculator out and kind of figure out how much that is. When you made the budget, you were spending about $1,800, right? That was your net spendable, roughly. Okay, so 20% of 1,800 is $360. Now, meaning from the time last year or 2 years ago, prices have increased on the average $360 a month for the average person on minimum wage. Okay, or making that kind of money, $1,500 a month. That's about on the average. You take everything into consideration. Okay, so $360 a month. Now we take that and we times it by 12. Calculator out, we'll times that. And we get $4,320. This number represents how much extra money that you are paying right now on the average if you're on your own, how much a person making that much a month is paying extra about $4,000 per year if you take everything, all your expenses into consideration. And we can have a side conversation to discuss how that actually is calculated. Okay. Now, that's an extra $4,000 for the year that the average family or person is paying in increased prices. Now, what about your entire lifetime? Let's say you're 18 years old. We'll bump you up to 20. We'll use round numbers. And let's say you live to 80 years old. Okay, that's another 60 years of life. Okay, so we take that 4,320 times 60 years, and that's $259,000 extra that you're paying out now. You will over your lifetime for the inflation that has happened already. Now, this number represents the max you'll pay in extra prices as long as there's no more inflation in your future, as long as you're here on Earth. Yeah, I think there's a chance of that happening because I just read a economist, well-respected economist, who's saying that prices are going to probably increase an average of 10% over this next year. Through 2023. So that's an additional 10% of that $1,500. So we have, not only do we have the $259,000, now we have 10%, so that'd be $115 a month times 12. That's another $1,380 a year times 60 years. Actually, technically that'd be 59 years, wouldn't it? Because it's another year. And that's another $81,000 because of the inflation that's going to happen over the next 12 months. So add that total to your previous total, and you get $340,620 average that you're paying over your lifetime for the inflation that's happened and going to happen through next year. Whoopee! I don't know about you, but I sure could use an extra $340,000. And see, you're not going to notice. How do I know? Because you hadn't noticed over the last 10 years, prices have increased a little bit because of small inflation. Inflation simply shreds the purchasing power for our money. And you just haven't noticed overall. You notice, yeah, my chips are an extra quarter, my burrito's an extra $1, but now you're noticing my meals at a fast food or restaurant, they're about $10-15 more a piece. The gas, wow, that's twice as much now. Ask your parents or whoever rents if their rent has gone up, or their electricity bill, food. Whew. Okay, now that's why it's called a hidden tax, because it's money that's being taken from you, but you really don't see it. It's being taken from you in higher prices, and that's how inflation personally affects you. Okay, so then we have something else with interest and inflation. What's going on there? How does interest affect inflation, inflation affect interest? Well, with higher prices, the Fed's got to do something. Okay? They've got to control it. And so here's what's happening. In order to control inflation, they have to stop people from spending money, right? The more money people spend, the higher the prices go. So they have to bring down people's spending. So they'll raise interest rates. Once again, when you raise the interest rates, your things get more expensive. Loans get more expensive, so businesses do not expand. And so it costs more, so they stop spending. If interest for new houses costs more, people will stop buying. And when you stop buying new houses, people who work construction, they don't work as much. Well, wait a second, Mr. Kimball. If that happens, then people are becoming unemployed, and people are losing their jobs, and things are getting more expensive. And I thought interest was supposed to stop inflation. Yeah, well, it will. But it's going to take some time. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take probably at minimum of 2-3 years for all that so the inflation isn't skyrocketing as fast as it is now. The last time we had a huge inflation spike was when I was 19 years old. Back in the early 80s, interest rates were 18%. They needed to do that because inflation was so high. And so when you raise interest rates all the way high, so much spending in our economy just stops. And it hurt a lot of people. A lot of people became unemployed. A lot of people, it was bad. However, what that did is it sucked all that extra money that was in the economy out, right? Because there was no new money coming in, people just spent what they had, and that was it. They ran out of money to spend. And it caused a time of bad economy. But it would have been a whole lot worse. And so that's what they're trying to do now. They're raising interest rates. So, how long is it going to last? Nobody knows. Because interest rates right now are only 2%. Okay, less than 2%. So how long is it going to take? We don't know. And that's the Federal Reserve's job, is to do all that. So, is there going to be a recession? Look that up, what that is coming along. Are we going to be seeing more hurting? Oh, yes. And wait a second. But why is the government doing that? Whose fault is it? Good question. Whose fault is it they keep printing money? Well, you liked that free COVID money, didn't you? And you're really happy with it. Yeah. It's the same thing as if I'm taking $10 from you, right? Give me $10. I take it from you and I walk off. Okay? 2 months later, I give you $2. You're happy for that $2, huh? Yes. But you forgot I took $10 from you. So you're really $8 behind. That's basically free stuff. Okay? They take taxes away and they give you a little bit back. Wait a second. That doesn't, never mind. This is not politics, okay? I just teach government and economics. Okay. So there you have it. So, but why that extra spending in government? Why don't they just stop it? Well, who controls our government in this country? Yep, the voters. You and I. Those who vote, or those who will vote. But we simply like free stuff, don't we? We're very happy when we get money from the government for something that doesn't cost us anything, right? But now you know it really does cost us, and to the tune of $340,000 over your lifetime from here on out. And that's as if no other inflation happens starting a year from now in the future. Okay, so we got all this bad stuff happening. Okay, all this bad stuff. First time in my life you're thinking, never experienced this before, what do I do? You just have to prepare. You just have to realize prices are going to go up and prepare for that. Maybe buy a few extra things that you think are going to go up again, and you're going to buy them anyway. Buy a couple if you can afford it. Do what you can. Okay, because people are going to be needing more assistance. Okay, and where do they get that assistance? From the government. Where does the government get that assistance? From taxes. If they don't have enough taxes to pay for it, how do they do it? They print it. But I thought printing more extra money was bad for it is. Whew. It's going to get rough. They've got to figure it all out, how it's all going to work, so it doesn't skyrocket out of control and we turn into Venezuela, what happened there, or another one of these other countries that inflation just is out of control right now. Okay? Okay, there you have it. Inflation, interest, and the Federal Reserve. A general summary. Now you have some more references in your brain to complete all the questions, have some good conversations, and get through it. And most of all, to help you understand more how money works so you can better prepare for you and others for the hard times that will come now. And you know this is going to happen again sometime in your life because that's just the way it is. Okay? Okay.